about the entanglement of publication processes and research designs. The foundation for this talk is a project where the preliminary study is just finished, and the main project is to begin in September 2022. The project is about publication processes and how they affect research designs and findings. I am the PI of this project, and I'm going to do this project together with 2 PhD students. The project is about publication processes and the issue that universities, you all know that, increasingly evaluate the output of our research by specific sociometrical indicators. And this might be a problem, especially for researchers working with non-mainstream methods, for example, post-qualitative research or art-based research, researchers who seek just venues or non-mainstream venues for the dissemination of their research. And we ask if these specific environments maybe influence the research designs of researcher and therefore also the findings of researcher. However, preliminary outcomes of our research are rather that there are these pressures to publish in specific venues, but nevertheless research venues for dissemination became more diverse over the years. So one thing to do in our project will be to track research projects that used such different venues and very diverse venues to do their research. The theoretical part of the preliminary project and the main project are on epistemological models of research, which usually consist in philosophy of science and philosophy of social science, usually are made of 3 components: the research subject, the research object, and the method. And our preliminary findings suggest that a different model of research, where the dissemination is brought into this model of science, sheds a new light on the production of results. And to do this, we employ a new materialist perspective. Why we want to do this? Because our preliminary studies shows that, of course, we all know that many universities favor publication in index journals, and sociometrics become increasingly important for university and research and for their careers. And it seems like that monographs anthology is less valued before, and sure there are environments where this happens accordingly, but in the literature and also in our preliminary study, we see that publication venues also remain and gain diversity. So the question for us is, do the publication venues transform a result which might be already there, or does the anticipated publication venue alter a research design or the analysis? And if we go back to theoretical models of research, they're usually compound around 3 components, and if we go through different versions of these research models from different theoretical perspectives, we have, from the perspective of positivism, and this is where we a very brief discussion of these three perspectives. So it's not very nuanced or differentiated, but we have a rather passive subject, a rather passive object, which is waiting to be represented through research, and a rather active instrument, which is doing the research. So in positivism, we have an instrument which is measuring for the passive researcher who awaits the research results. And we have a research result that is representing the object, a specific reality. In constructionism, we have an active constructing subject with agency that is actively using a specific instrument, actively also imprinting the passively object to with the research subject's meanings. So the result is a research object which is only viewed through the constructions, through the perspective of the research subject. So it's constructed by humans, which doesn't mean that it's not really there or doesn't exist in reality, but it only can be viewed through the constructions of the human who is researching the subject. So the findings actually represent the human construction of a specific object. While in new materialism, the perspective I work with, and in post-structuralism, the separation of the subject and the object and the method is produced within a specific material discursive process. And from this perspective, there are no components of this process which are preceding the process of research, and these three components are produced within the process. So also the results are produced within a specific process and do then not represent a specific research object or a specific construction, but a component that is simultaneously produced with the subject and the object and the method. And therefore entangled, it produces reality, but contains also references to the components of the research process. Therefore, there is the question if processes of dissemination, which are usually excluded from these standard models of scientific research, shouldn't be included into the model, because when we disseminate our research, there are many processes that influence that process of dissemination. Conventions to write, a specific number of characters, a specific space in the journal, languages, an audience, the materiality of the presentation, dance or writing or singing, reviewers if they're there, or specific research policies. They are all influencing the dissemination processes. And again, all these influences are part of the research processes and are differentiated within the research processes from the perspective of new materialism. Therefore, we should include these processes into the model of scientific research. So the components which are produced within these processes are not just subject, method, object, dissemination, and object, but also dissemination, and of course also many more. But this is the starting point for our empirical research project, because even, for example, a very famous theoretical perspective in new materialism, Karen Barat's model of scientific research, does forget this level of dissemination, and of course also other levels of research. So we want to investigate specifically this component within the research apparatus. We want to interview authors, reviewers, editors. We materially collect different publications and disseminations from specific research projects. We are investigating forms of presentations and text forms, specific different materialities of publications. And investigating that, again, from our theoretical perspective, the findings are not a representation of a specific reality, but within the research process where subject, object, method, and also the dissemination processes are configured and differentiated, they are reference to reality and also reconfiguration of reality. And our preliminary findings are that this process produces, on the one hand, researchers who are responsible for the process of publication, responsible for anticipating paths of publication, and responsible for designing projects that are publishable. That next to the rules also contingencies are produced, but contingency is again not a feature of the reality, but the process of research produces contingencies where researchers react to specific occasions and reanalyze their data from a specific perspective. For example, calls for special issues or conferences that are from France, and a research group is invited to a conference from France, and they reanalyze their data according to a specific topic or perspective. So this process is producing findings because of this occasion. And also within the processes of research, a specific diversity is produced. Researchers in our interviews sometimes distinguished between real and fan publication. And very often they mean journal publication versus sometimes also art-based research or things like that. So the processes of research seem to produce hierarchies between different forms of publications. And